Welcome to Twilight Fables, where old tales are reborn in shadow and bone. Tonight, we begin a story stitched with darkness, a tale of a seamstress, a pair of cursed scissors, and the thin veil between light and what it hides. Gather close and listen well to the first part of the scissors that cut shadows. The village of Draymore was a place most travellers passed without memory. Its crooked lanes wound through damp woods, where moss-smothered roofs and the air forever smelled of smoke and mildew. The villagers kept to themselves, faces pale from the cold, and from secrets they did not share. Few houses had windows unshuttered after dark, and those who worked by candlelight learned not to speak of what sometimes flickered against their walls. In the heart of Dremore, at the edge of the square, stood a shop no larger than a stable, its sign swinging gently in the wind, tailoring and mending by Serah Vane. Serah was not remarkable in appearance, a woman of middling height, hair the colour of unspun flax, eyes a grey, so pale they seemed almost glassy. She rarely smiled, though not from unkindness, but from weariness. For as long as anyone could remember, she had been hunched over her work, mending torn coats, darning socks, stitching gowns for the wives of merchants who thought Draymore beneath them, but still brought coin. The villagers whispered that Serah's stitches never came loose, that clothes she repaired seemed stronger than before. Some said she threaded more than fabric, that she could bind luck itself into cloth. Serah never confirmed such talk. She worked, she kept her head down, and she endured her solitude. One storm-beaten evening, as rain rattled the shutters and the square emptied of its market, Serah found herself sorting through a chest of supplies left by her grandmother. The old woman had been a tailor too, though her reputation had been less wholesome. Some called her a witch, with needle and thread, a woman who could stitch charms into a hem or a curse into a cuff. Serah had inherited little beyond scraps of cloth, broken thimbles, and a single bundle wrapped in oilcloth. She unwrapped it carefully, expecting rusted tools or moth-eaten fabric. Instead, she found a pair of scissors unlike any she had seen before. The blades were long, thin, forged of some dark iron that seemed to swallow the candlelight. Their handles were wrought into curling shapes, like vines wrapping a trellis, and when she held them, she felt a weight that was not wholly physical. The air around them grew still, as if listening. Her grandmother had left no note, no warning, only the scissors themselves. Serah turned them in her hands. They were sharp, unnervingly so. She tested them on a scrap of muslin, and the blade slid through without sound, clean as water parting. That night, she set them on her work table, telling herself she would try them on a true garment the next day. Yet when she lay down to sleep, she could not help but notice the way her candle's flame trembled, and how her own shadow stretched longer than it should have, curling toward the table where the scissors lay. The first accident happened 2 nights later. Serah had been mending a travelling cloak torn at the hem. She cut away a frayed piece, her scissors snipping neatly, but as she lifted them again, the blade brushed against the edge of the table where her lamp sat. She heard a sound, not the scrape of metal on wood, but something softer, almost like tearing fabric. She glanced down. At her feet, her shadow flickered strangely, the edge of it jagged. Frowning, she moved the lamp, expecting the shape to shift. But no, there, on the floor, her shadow had a corner missing, as though someone had cut it away with perfect precision, and on her work table lay a sliver of darkness, thin and weightless, curling in the air before settling like cloth. Serah froze. She touched it, half expecting her hand to pass through, but her fingers brushed something cool, like the thinnest silk. She lifted it gingerly. It wriggled faintly, like a living thing. Her candle sputtered. The shadows in her room seemed to press closer, restless. With a trembling hand, she dropped the piece into her scrap basket. It melted into the fabric, sinking out of sight. Serah told herself she was tired, that her eyes had played tricks. Yet that night, her dreams were full of strange images. A pile of cuttings, writhing like worms. A pair of scissors opening and closing by themselves. And a whispering voice that sounded like her grandmother's saying, "Mind what you trim, child." Shadows cling tighter than thread. Days passed. She tried not to use the scissors, but her hands strayed to them again and again. They cut with such ease, saving her hours of work. And there was something else. Her clients began to remark on her skill in ways they never had before. The widow Brenner, stooped with age, brought in a shawl to mend. While working, Serah's scissors brushed the old woman's shadow where it hunched against the wall. By the time Brenner left, she walked straighter. The weight on her back eased as though it had never been. A boy with a twisted arm brought his coat for repair. When he returned for it, his arm seemed smoother, less bent, though he swore she had never touched him. The villagers whispered louder now. Some called her blessed. Others muttered of bargains best left unspoken. But none could deny her work had taken on something wondrous. Serah herself didn't speak of what she had begun to notice. Scraps of shadow curling at her feet after each job, writhing until she swept them into a chest she now kept locked. Nor did she speak of the way her scissors sometimes trembled in her grip, as though eager. She told herself she was doing good. She was helping. What harm was there in cutting away suffering, if the suffering clung only to shadows? Yet at night, as she stitched by her lamp, she swore the darkness in her corners deepened, thick as velvet, and she thought she saw eyes, glints of light, watching her from within. One evening, a merchant's wife named Elira came to her with a gown. Elira was vain, her beauty marred only by a thin scar along her cheek. She begged Serah to hide it, saying no lace or powder could conceal it well enough. Serah hesitated. She had never tried to cut something so precise, but the scissors felt heavy in her hands, almost humming. She drew the blades open, and as Elira turned in the lamplight, she lowered them. The blades did not touch flesh, only the dark line across the woman's cheek, etched in her shadow. With a soft snip, it fell away. Elira gasped, hand flying to her face. The scar was gone, skin smooth as glass. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Bless you, Serah. Bless you 100 times." The piece of shadow twitched on the floor like a worm cut in half. Serah crushed it under her shoe, though she swore she felt it pulse against her soul. After Elira left, Serah bolted the door, heart hammering. She stared at the scissors on her table. Their blades gleamed, though she had not polished them, and she thought she heard a faint sound, like breathing. That night, she woke awoke to find her lamp blown out. The moonlight through her shutters cast faint shapes across the room. But something was wrong. Her own shadow stretched on the floor, yet it moved, shifting slowly toward the table where the scissors lay. Serah sat up, her breath shallow. The shadow bent, reaching, as if stretching its hand toward the iron blades. She leapt up, striking a flint, relighting the lamp. At once, the shadow snapped back into place beneath her. Her hand shook as she stared at it. It was still hers. It obeyed the light, but for the first time, Serah wondered if it always would. The mornings in Dremore grew stranger with each passing week. At first, no one noticed the little oddities. A man forgetting the sound of his own laugh. A child who swore she felt cold even in the fire's glow. A merchant's wife staring at her reflection with unblinking eyes for hours. But slowly, the village began to change. It began with Serah's clients. The widow, Brenna, who had left Serah's shop walking straighter than she had in 20 years, now complained of hollow dreams. She said she no longer felt weight upon her back, but nor did she feel the warmth of sunlight. "It is as though the world has grown thin," she murmured to Serah one day, her eyes pale with confusion. "Thin, like paper." The boy with the twisted arm stopped playing in the square. His friends teased him, saying he stared at his shadow too long, that he touched the floor to see if it would move. His mother wept, saying he hardly ate. Elira, with her scar erased, smiled too brightly whenever she passed Serah, yet her shadow, in the lamplight of her husband's tavern, seemed not to follow her quite right. It lagged, slow and sticky, like tar sliding across the floor. Serah noticed these things. She tried to bury her dread in work, telling herself she had brought kindness, healing, beauty. But every time she closed her shop door, she felt whispers following her. The scissors trembled in her hands more often now, the blades glinting as though they thirsted for use. One storm-heavy evening, Serah bolted her door and sat with her candle low, trying to stitch a cloak without glancing at the scissors. Yet her hands strayed toward them as if guided. She cut fabric, but the blades opened wider, tugging toward the dark corner of the room. She dropped them, breath ragged. The candle sputtered. The room grew thick with shadow, and then, faintly, just faintly, she heard a sound, rustling, like cloth dragged across the floor. She turned. From the corner, scraps of shadow wriggled, gathering. They crawled like severed fingers, joining into shapes. She saw the bent hunch she had trimmed from Brenna, the twist of the boy's crooked arm, the faint dark line of Elira's scar. Piece by piece, they slithered together in a heap. Serah's throat went dry. She seized her candle, rushing forward, thrusting the flame into the mass. At once it recoiled, hissing, the shadows shivering apart. They retreated into cracks and under her chest, leaving the floor bare again. But the air reeked of cold ash, and her candle burned lower than it should have. Serah sank to her knees, whispering a prayer she had not spoken since childhood. The scissors sat gleaming on her table, and for the first time she realized she could not bring herself to touch them. Sleep offered no refuge. Serah dreamed of her grandmother's hands, thin and veined, holding the same scissors. In the dream, her grandmother whispered, "Every stitch costs something, child. Every cut takes more than you know. Shadows are not scraps. They are the cloth itself. Serah woke gasping. The room was dark. Her lamp guttered out. She reached for her flint, but froze. Her shadow moved. It shifted on the floor, not matching her breath, not matching the trembling of her hand. Slowly, it raised its arm, pointing toward the scissors on the table. Serah's chest clenched. "No," she whispered. "You belong to me." The shadow tilted its head. Then it smiled, a thin slit stretching across the dark of its face. Though her own lips had not moved, the scissors rattled where they lay, their blades quivering open and shut, like jaws hungry to bite. Serah struck her flint, relit the lamp. At once, her shadow snapped flat, mouth gone, body still. The scissors stilled as well. But Serah could not sleep again that night. She sat in her chair until dawn, watching her shadow, daring it to move. Word spread quickly in Draymore that something was wrong. Elira fainted during a market day, her husband shouting for help. When villagers lifted her, they swore her shadow did not lift with her. It stuck to the ground, writhing until it peeled away and slithered back under her skirts. The widow Brenna was found wandering the churchyard, pressing her hands against gravestones and asking which one belonged to her. She could not remember the weight of her husband's embrace, only that something had once held her, and it was gone. But the boy with the mended arm drew shapes on the tavern floor with chalk, shapes that twisted like knots. He whispered to them, saying the pieces of him wanted back in. The villagers began avoiding Serah's shop. Some crossed themselves as they passed, others spat at her shutters. She heard the words hissed at her door: witch, curse, shadow thief. Serah shut herself in, locking the scissors in her grandmother's chest, but no lock held long. Each morning she found the chest open, the scissors lying on her table once more, their blades gleaming as though freshly polished. One evening, desperate, she tried to rid herself of them. She carried the scissors to the riverbank outside Draymore. The moon was high, silver spilling over the black water. Serah hurled the scissors into the current, her breath shaking. For a moment, she felt relief. The night air was cool, her hands empty. She turned to go, but behind her, the reeds rustled. The scissors lay on the bank once more, wet but whole, the blades open wide. Serah screamed, hurling them again, farther this time. She waited, breath held. Minutes passed. The water flowed silently. No scissors surfaced. She turned to leave, and there they were, not on the bank, but in her hand, heavy, cold. Her shadow shivered beneath her feet, spreading longer across the ground, as though eager. That night, the whispers returned. They came not from the corners, but from the cuttings themselves, the scraps she had hidden in the locked chest. She heard them rustling, crawling, brushing against the wood. She pressed her ear to the chest. At first, silence. Then, voices. Give us back. Give us back. Whole again. Whole again. Her skin prickled. She dragged the chest to the hearth, flung it open. The scraps writhed like worms, dozens of them, curling together. She seized the tongs and thrust them into the flames. The scraps screamed. The sound was not in her ears, but inside her skull, scraping against bone. They blackened, shriveled, turned to ash. Serah staggered back, panting. She thought she had won, but as the fire died, her shadow stretched across the floor toward the hearth, finger-thin strands reaching for the ashes. It touched them, and the ashes moved. They rose like soot caught in a draught, but instead of vanishing, they clung together, forming thin threads, threads of shadow, threads that writhed back toward her. Serah fled into the night, heart pounding. The village did not sleep that night. Those who lay awake swore they saw shapes moving along their walls. Not their own shadows, but others, crawling, seeking. Lamps sputtered, candles went out without cause. Dogs whined and would not cross thresholds. And above it all, in her workshop, Serah sat in the dark, scissors before her. Their blades glowed faintly, as though heated from within. She whispered to them, "What do you want from me?" The scissors opened, closed, opened, closed. Her shadow stretched along the floor, toward them, trembling, eager. Serah gripped her knees, shivering. She knew then that the scissors had not been tools at all. They were mouths, and they were hungry, hungry for the last cut, hungry for her. The days in Draymore grew colder, though no frost lay on the ground. Shadows lengthened long before sunset, stretching across cobblestones like black veins. Doors stayed barred, lamps burned late, and villagers whispered prayers beneath their breath as they passed one another in the square. And always the name Serah Vane drifted in their whispers. Her shop, once busy, now stood shuttered, though faint candlelight flickered through cracks at night. Some swore they saw figures moving inside, not Serah, but shadows, pacing, gesturing, crawling along the walls like insects. Others said they heard weeping from within, though no voice followed it. Children dared one another to throw stones at her door. None of them struck it. The stones veered off, landing far from her step, as though some unseen hand had pushed them away. The villagers feared her, but fear was not enough to keep them away forever. On the 7th night, after the shadows first gathered in her shop, there was a knock at Serah's door. She had been sitting in the dark, scissors in her lap, too afraid to light a lamp. Her shadow twisted beneath her chair, restless. When the knock came, she flinched, clutching the blades. "Serah Vane," a man's voice called. It was the priest, Father Corbin. "The village has seen enough. Come out, child. Leave that cursed place. We will burn it and be rid of this." Serah rose slowly. The scissors throbbed in her hands, warm, as though pulsing with blood. Her shadow stretched long toward the door, quivering. "I can't," she whispered. "They won't let me." The door rattled. "Serah, please. We will cleanse you. The light of the church." The words cut off in a scream. Serah stumbled back as a black shape slipped under the crack of the door. Not one shape, many. Scraps of shadow, writhing, pouring in like a tide. They slithered across the floor, crawling toward her, whispering in 100 voices. "Whole, whole. Give us back. Give us you." The scissors leapt in her hands, blades snapping open and shut. Her shadow swelled, stretching across the room, its head rising from the floor like a second body. It was her, but not her. Its mouth stretched wide, jagged, filled with nothing but darkness, and it smiled. The shadows surged, joining together, scraps knotting with scraps, until they formed something larger. A body, a face, arms, legs, all stolen pieces stitched into a grotesque figure. The hunch from Brenna's back bent one shoulder. The boy's twisted arm jutted from its side. Elira's scar curled across its cheek, though deeper, rawer. The patchwork shadow stood, trembling, reaching for her. Its eyes were hollows, yet she felt them pierce her like knives. "Give us back," it hissed, though no mouth moved. "You cut us, you took us, now you pay." Serah shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "I only wanted to help. I only wanted to mend." The scissors spoke then, not in words, but in her bones. A whisper sharp as steel. "Cut the cloth clean. You were always meant to." Her hand moved against her will, blades rising. The shadow creature staggered forward, arms outstretched. Her own shadow rose behind her, pressing close, whispering into her ear with her own voice. "One last stitch, one last snip. Give me freedom, and I will be you." Serah screamed and drove the scissors forward. The blades pierced the patchwork shadow, and it howled, not in pain, but in hunger. The scraps writhed, struggling to pour into the blades, to merge, to make themselves whole. The scissors drank them. Serah felt it. Every cut she had ever made, every piece she had stolen, every whisper of darkness, all of it flooded into the iron. The blades grew heavier, hotter, their glow searing her palms. The patchwork shadow collapsed, folding in on itself, sucked into the scissors. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the blade snapped shut and turned on her. Her shadow seized her wrists, dragging her arms upward. The scissors opened wide, their edge gleaming. "No," Serah gasped. She fought, but a shadow held her fast, stronger than flesh. The blades lowered to the floor, where her shadow's feet clung. With a single swift motion, they cut, agony unlike any she had known, split her in two. It was not her body that tore, but something deeper, the tether between her and the thing that followed her always. She felt herself hollow, as though a piece of her had been ripped away. She collapsed, gasping, her limbs heavy. The room swam in black. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Her shadow stood apart from her, whole, tall, smiling with her face. It bent, lifting the scissors with hands darker than night. It twirled them once, the blades gleaming in the candlelight. Then it looked down at her body, pale, trembling, empty. "You've done your work," it whispered in her voice. "Now let me do mine." When morning came, the villagers found Serah's door ajar. The shop inside was neat, orderly. A cloak lay half mended on the table, needles still in the fabric. No dust, no sign of struggle, no Serah. Only her shadow remained. It moved across the floor without her, cutting threads with scissors that gleamed, though no hand touched them. It looked up at the villagers, smiled with teeth of darkness, and whispered, "Next." From that day, no one entered Draymore Square after sunset. The shop still stands, shutters closed, sign swaying in the wind. but those foolish enough to glance through its cracks at night swear they see her shadow working by candlelight, scissors snipping endlessly, cutting pieces from the dark itself. And if you linger too long by her door, you might notice something missing when you walk away, a limp you did not have, a scar erased, a weight lifted. But when you light a lamp that night, your shadow will not look quite the same, and perhaps, just perhaps, it will be smiling when you are not. Thus ends the tale of the scissors that cut shadows. Remember, not all wounds are meant to be mended, and not all threads should be cut. Some shadows are best left untrimmed.